Welcome, everyone. I'm Aaron Davis, current club president, Bloomington Rotary Club. Welcome to our celebration of service for March 3rd, 2020. It's wonderful to have a great turnout. Good to see you all. We're going to start out with Jim Shea working his way up as we speak to lead the pledge and give reflection.
Please join me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Aaron. Good afternoon, Rotarians. Sunshine, spring, it's all good. I think everybody in this room is well aware of the incredible legacy of Herman B. Wells. It's all around us at the university. But what folks may be less aware of is in the 60s, Herman was very instrumental in recruiting some notable nonprofit educational groups to Bloomington. One of those was Phi Delta Kappa, PDK, which in its heyday had a lot of employees here, had 150,000 members nationwide. And the second one I want to talk about is AIT, Agency for Instructional Technology. AIT moved to Bloomington from New York in 1968, and it became a part of the IU Foundation. It then began a really stellar 25 years in instructional television and was really one of the dominant players in instructional television nationwide. The goal of AIT, where I worked for about 15 years, was simple: excellence. That was the mission, the vision, and the goal. Very simple. Everything coming out of here is going to be excellent. AIT, to achieve that, was very committed to a process called formative evaluation. And I was director of research and evaluation there for about a decade. And I had the lucky task of taking AIT materials out to schools around the US and Canada. And I was in about 400 schools during that time frame. I could tell stories for days about that period, but the most interesting one was an elementary school in South LA that had 5,000 students, K through 5. They billed themselves as the largest elementary school in the free world. Well, as many of you know, nobody ever retires. They just transition to other stuff. So some of my former colleagues from AIT who are transitioned to other stuff are working now on doing some compelling programming. Last year, they did the award-winning program on Reverend Marvin Chandler that was shown on WTIU and also featured at the Heartland Film Festival. And they are currently working on a program on Indiana's charter schools. Now, I haven't worked with these guys in probably 20 years, but they called me and asked me to do some research for them on this program. So everybody on the program, including me, is volunteering their time because we're, of course, all retired and we have lots of it. So after next week's meeting, I'm going to be leading a focus group here in the Union in the Hoosier Room. And I'd like to get volunteers of about 10 to 12 people to watch this program and just give honest feedback on it. So there's only 2 requirements. You have to be interested in education, which I think the entire room is, and you have to be willing to be totally honest in your reactions to the program. So we're going to meet in the Hoosier Room. It'll take about an hour. If you're interested, email me at jpshea@indiana.edu. I'm hoping to get about 8 to 10 people. I think you're going to find it very interesting. And in an interesting, weird sort of a way, it continues a thread that was started by Herman B. Wells in the 60s. So hope to hear from some of you, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you. After next week's meeting, March 10th. March 10th, right after the meeting, in the Hoosier Room. And it'll take about an hour. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. And I'd like to acknowledge our greeter today with the flying elbows, past President Winston Schindel, our photographer, past with the flying shutter, past President Charlie Osborne, Community Access Television Services, and our roundabout reporter for March, who is past President and Assistant District Governor Sarah Laughlin. And thanks for Alan Barker for the duty last month. It was a lot of work in the roundabout, and Judy Schroeder, thank you always for this incredible weekly publication. Yes. And thank you to the servers, staff, and leadership of the IMU and IU Catering Services. And special greetings to visiting Rotarian Brian Hain. Yes, you. President of the Bloomington North Rotary Club, who time traveled all the way from the Tudor Room last Thursday. And to introduce our guests, Kate Cruikshank.
Well, we have quite a few wonderful guests, and if you would stand when I call your name so we could give you a good Rotary greeting, that would be great. I am going to start with Brian Hain, who's the only one who wrote completely illegibly on here, and I know him. So, Brian. Don Weiler is a guest of Roseanne and Artie Levy. Sarah Laughlin has two guests today, John Armstrong and Bill Brown. I believe Aaron also has two guests, Arnold Fodor and our speaker, Nick Blanford. Courtney Stewart is a guest of Liz Feidel. And Bryony Gomez Palacio is a guest of Sally Gaskell. And Joel Neese is a guest of Megan Neese. So welcome to all of you, and you've got lots of people to ask about Rotary.
Thank you, Kate. I guess there's nothing like having a secret in the title of a speech to draw attention, but thank you for all being here. I want to talk a little bit about our Rotary family. Bob Salzberg isn't here today, but his birthday is March 6th. Membership anniversaries this week, Jack Kirtland, 28 years, and John Hobson, there's John's here, 35 years. Thank you. Rotarians in the news, of course, we have Judy DeMuth here, who announced retirement from MSC. So thank you very much. Congratulations. I'm not from around these parts, so the acronyms sort of lose me. And I do want to report that Hank Heichema is doing better and will sometime soon be able to have visitors. So he had some significant surgery, so he's doing better. Rotary Action Update. Most of these will be in these, in the roundabout, our trustee roundabout. But I do want to say that there is a deadline coming up for the District Matching Grant Service Project. So the application's out there. We need to have them back in to Ann Connors and the Community Services Foundation by March 9th. Liz Feidel. Last week's Hoosier Hills Food Bank Service Project was a big success. Liz, do you want to say something?
We had 20 Rotarians.
20.
20, and we had about 200 boxes of senior nutrition project food that will go out to them that lasts maybe 6 days, they said. So they need a lot of boxes. So if you or anyone else knows of a group that would be interested in going there, it could be day or evening, they would really appreciate that as well. But we've done it now for several years, and they really appreciate us coming. Thank you to all that's helped.
And anyone who participated, please stand. This year or in past years. People of action, yes, thank you. It has been a busy month. Art Olmec, do you have an update on the WTIU phone banking?
Well, we did it.
Yes.
It's a ton of fun, you know, volunteer work. They feed you more pizza than you can eat. You sit there on your butt and you answer the phone. And, it is fun. It really is fun. We thought we were just going to be window dressing because people don't really call in much anymore. They don't even order the computer. But no, there's still quite a few people that called in. And it was fun. It was fun.
Thank you, Art. And who attended there? Who was in the phone bank? Any? Amy and Owen, I remember. Yeah. Okay, thank you. The Rotary Leadership Institute was Saturday. We had a great showing at Ivy Tech with 8 club members and 2 Rotaractors there. So thank you. Yeah, why don't you stand? Everyone who was at the RLI. You wonder how we get leaders. Well, you know, we help, we talk. It's a big conversation to move into leadership. The 505 on Thursday was also a lot of fun. We'll do it again, March 26th. And Rosie has volunteered to provide some entertainment, so that'll be fun. At Viva Mas again. Women's History Month celebration is March 25th. Jessica Hain is one of 2 Women of the Year honorees, and we're just delighted. Let Judy Witt or me know if you're interested in joining a Rotary Table of 8. That'll cost $35 per person, and individual luncheon tickets are $25. I know the North Club and Brian Hain have almost 2 tables, right? The wife and I, right. Okay, so let us know, because we want to participate. We also may do an information table there. Rotary District Conference is April 17th to 18th in Plainfield, Indiana, the two districts, and it'll be a wonderful, exciting Rotary experience also. Registration for new Rotarians and Rotarians age 40 and under is just $105. I also want to announce that later this month begins the bicentennial year for the Monroe County Public Library, which has just eliminated late fees. So we have more to look forward to, Marilyn. And then the reminder about May 16th, it Takes a Village free resource fair for parents, infants, and toddlers. Now, how about some happy dollars? Susie? I know the navigation is a little more difficult.
I'm going to start over here.
Jim Harvey.
I have some extra happy dollars on 2 different topics. First, congratulations to Marilyn and Judy for the joint venture on the new library and bachelor property. That's a great day for the community. Thank you so much for working that out. Is not a so happy dollar. We take for granted service above self. And I hope you realize that most of the people who serve on city boards and commissions do so as volunteers and are unpaid. Thanks to Cats, I got to witness the city park board meeting last Thursday night. It was absolutely brutal, depending on your perspective, but brutal on behalf of a former Rotarian and a longtime friend of mine, Les Point. If you know Les or any other members, Kathleen Mills happened to be a colleague in the school corporation, but that meeting was something to behold. And we talk about positive, values, and virtues. That meeting reinforced everything negative that you could imagine. And I was sorry to witness it, but I needed to witness it, and I needed to say something today. So if you reach out to Les, let him know that you care about him and you care about his service, because he's been on that board a very long time, and the amount of good he's done in this community is beyond measure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Rosie.
Yeah, I love Happy Dollars. One reason is that today I was so happy to attend the Rotary Leadership Institute. It was just awesome, amazing. I can't wait to do part 2. We just learned so much about the Rotary, and it's all wonderful, great people, and just a wonderful experience. And number 2, I participated with my dear friend Dawn at the home show. Rosie did at his booth, Bailey and Weiler, to make balloons and really put smiles on faces for all the kids that came by, and it was so much fun. It was just so much fun, just rewarding, just seeing them smile and, you know, just get a little balloon and make them happy. So,
Thank you, Rosie.
I'm happy because finally tonight at 8 o'clock on WTIU, the Ernie Pyle documentary that's been in the works for almost 6 years will appear. I hope you'll watch it.
Excellent. Marilyn.
In addition to the wonderful things happening at the library, my daughter last week, along with 2 cats, made a cross-country trip to California where she started a new job yesterday.
Congratulations. Liz.
I'm happy to say we have plenty of these brochures about free community tax service left. If you need a bundle, if you just need a few, come by our office at 431 South College. We're still serving until mid-April.
Thank you, Liz.
I'm happy that one of the very talented people I met at AIT many years ago was Susie Glenn.
Okay. Sarah?
Sure. I'm happy because my beautiful daughter that many of you know, Hannah, is getting married at my house on April 11th. Oh my gosh. Eric Armstrong, who's just a wonderful man. I'm so happy for them. And also, that is assuming that she survived. She's on the emergency task force for the university, and they're working 12-hour days to get prepared for the coronavirus. So she's using her MPH vitamin. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and congratulations. Steve Engel.
I'm happy because I got a visit from my daughter of the last 4 days, and I hadn't seen her for almost a year and a half, so it was really special for both of us. Really pleased. And secondly, I'm just happy because I want to congratulate Judy Demuth on her retirement. I think the Monroe County school system that she's ponchoed for all these years is probably the envy of most of the school systems in the state of Indiana.
Thank you. Leslie.
I'm happy that I've learned how to wash my hands properly. And until I touched that money, I had the cleanest hands in Bloomington. So I would encourage all of you to really watch the videos about washing your hands, because there's a lot more to it than just rubbing them under water. There's good stuff. You gotta learn.
That's an important reminder. Thank you. And Charlotte?
Three happy dollars, one for Judy Duluth, thank you.
One for Judy?
2 for her living in a community which strives to be friendly and communal. And I think the Parks Department situation is an aberration of hope that we can overcome it.
I hope so too. Thank you, Charlotte. Lynn Schwartzberg.
I have a big happy dollar, so I'm going to indulge myself. I'm very, very happy that last night One World Catering was the site for the One World Enterprises annual managers dinner, and I was so proud of my staff for putting on a gorgeous feast. It's very stressful to feed your boss. I'm also very happy, not that I missed last week, but that I was in Washington, D.C. lobbying for public broadcasting and the benefits that our public television station brings to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay for access to a great community resource.
Thank you, Lynn. And Sally Gaskell.
I'm happy because I'm just back from an amazing trip to the countries of Egypt and Jordan. I'm back safely. There's no coronavirus there yet, as far as I know. Also, just so you know, they're totally safe countries. The threat level given by the United States State Department is the same as if you were traveling to Western Europe. So there's that. But I'm really happy to be back with my Rotary family.
Welcome back. Julia, yes.
I am happy that I am of the generation that doesn't walk around with my eyes glued to my phone and my ears into my phone, because I listened to the most beautiful song between two cardinals this morning when I was out for my walk. It was absolutely joyous. Happy spring will be here soon, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you all very much. And the money collected does go to Teachers Warehouse. And now, Sally Gaskell will be coming up here to introduce our program for today.
So it turns out this is a really special day because I've been a member of the Bloomington Rotary Program Committee for eons, but never have I had all of my speakers for 1 year in the same room at the same time. So my focus for this year is to present speakers from the arts sector in Bloomington, the for-profit arts sector. And you may recall the first speakers were Bryony Gomez-Palacio and her husband Armand Vitt, who run the graphic design firm Under Consideration. My May program will be John Armstrong of Pegasus Pictures. And today, I'm really happy to present Nick Blandford of the Secretly Group. So Nick came to Bloomington in 2000, and he's been with Secretly since 2003. He has served as its managing director for the last 7 years, and he, as you will find out, is thoroughly conversant with the music industry. I know that he supported the first ever Bloomington Music Expo last year and again this year. I first met Nick when I was the chair of the Bloomington Arts Commission, and he joined the commission shortly after the 2016 election. And I asked him why at our lunch, and he said he wanted to make a difference in the community. I found that Nick is a natural leader, and the Arts Commission has certainly benefited from his participation in that citizens group. He currently chairs the Arts Commission's Public Art Planning Committee, and that group has been particularly busy in the last couple of years and remains so with new public art commissions throughout the community. I've really admired Nick in meetings. He's quiet, but when he speaks, he always has something measured, productive, and thoughtful to say. Nick lives with his wife Stephanie in McDowell Gardens, and I'm really happy to introduce him today.
Thank you for that generous introduction, Sally, and thank you everyone for having me here today. So I'm going to start this out the same way I would if I were speaking to one of Alon's classes. How many people in this room, just quick casual show of hands, are familiar with Secretly Group or Secretly Canadian? Okay. And how many of you have purchased an album in the last year? Okay. How many of you subscribe to some sort of music streaming service, Spotify or Apple or Pandora? Okay, cool. That's great. I just always like to have a good feel for sort of the room that I'm talking to. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on Secretly's history, our relationship with Bloomington, but also how that overlaps with the last 20 years of the evolution of the music industry. I did not prepare slides today, but there are a couple paper handouts on the table if you want to sort of follow along with the verbal timeline as I go through here. Secretly's history, since its founding in 1996, overlaps with a pretty significant period of change and rapid evolution in the music industry. Now, this is not unique to the music industry. A lot of businesses, I'm sure a lot of businesses that you've been involved with, have had to rapidly adapt to changes in technology, changes in consumer behavior, changes in how people spend their time, spend their money, interact with their family, interact with their friends, whether that happens in person or online. Our culture and how we interact has changed significantly. But in the music industry, there was this sort of deeper existential crisis that really started around the turn of the century, around the year 2000. And shortly after that is when I started my career. And I will admit that there were times where I felt like I had just entered a dying industry. Oh, I missed out on all of the big box music stores. I missed out on the CD boom. And what I learned is working for a company that was willing to adapt and learn and not sit in place was ultimately the key to growing and evolving within the industry. It's also the reason why we're still around, and I think nimble, adaptable companies like ourselves are. And some of the ones that didn't make it are the ones that couldn't adapt. And so I think that this whole story is about reaction and adapting and being willing to learn and grow and change. And so to focus in on a quick history of Secretly. So Secretly Group is a group of record labels based here in Bloomington. Its primary operation within Secretly Group includes 3 record labels: Dead Oceans, Jaguar, and Secretly Canadian. It also includes a music publishing division called Secretly Publishing. And then it is part of a larger Secretly Services company, which includes a music distribution company. We have a warehouse on the west side that's full of CDs and vinyl records. We do still sell those, and we sell quite a few. And we distribute somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 other independent record labels. Many are based in the US, but some come from other places throughout the world. So Secretly started here in Bloomington in 1996, originally just as one label, Secretly Canadian. It was founded by 4 guys who were students here at IU. They met while working in the cafeteria at Collins, just a few blocks away. 2 of the gentlemen who started the label were brothers, Chris and Ben Swanson. And once they both came to college here, their mother followed. She wasn't quite ready to have that much distance with the empty nest. And so when they started the label, it was a part-time thing while they were in school. And they operated out of their mother's basement. Truly a DIY business. Once they all graduated, they had this sort of moment of truth, and they faced a fork in the road. They wanted it to be a full-time career that they pursued. And I think they looked at it and said, all right, we're all out of school. Is this something we want to do in Bloomington? Should we go to a larger music market? In particular, I think they looked at city of Chicago. There were a lot of independent labels, particularly in the 1990s, that they looked up to. And they decided to stay here rather than following in the footsteps of these labels they looked up to. They said, let's stay in Bloomington and do our own weird thing. Around that time, they met a gentleman named Darius Van Arman, who had started a label called Jaguar in Charlottesville, Virginia, while he was a student at University of Virginia. And they naturally crossed paths. They had bands who toured with each other. They put on shows in basements. And they became fast friends. Darius was sort of struggling with how to run a business on his own, how to be the sole source of the passion for his label. And so he agreed to partner up with the guys from Secretly. Part of the deal was he moved to Bloomington in 1999, and that was sort of the next big step in the growth of the business. Shortly thereafter, they started Secretly Distribution, initially just as sort of a loose collective of friendly labels, and it was a plan to get distributors to order more titles so you could fit more things in a box, so they'd order more often. And it gradually grew into more of a proper business. Around the time that I started in 2003, I was about, I think, the 9th employee, including the owners. Now, we're in somewhere in the neighborhood of about 130 globally. Our home office is still in Bloomington. We have 2 offices here, one on the near west side on Bloomfield Road. The other is at 3rd and Rogers, right near Farr Gallery and the Fell, and sort of the growing arts corridor near downtown Bloomington. And while we have 60 or so employees here in Bloomington, the rest are scattered throughout the world. We have a large office in New York. We have a large office in London and LA. We have staff in Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, and a few other scattered places. And so one goal that we had throughout was to develop a truly international business. One way which we felt we could distinguish ourselves from our competitors is to provide a global partner solution for independent musicians. I think what we found is that there are a lot of independent record labels who are based in the UK and focus in Europe, or based in the US and all their staff is here. And we saw an opportunity in the market to compete with some of the larger UK-based labels who had global operations and be one of the few truly independent operations in the US that could offer global services. And so as our company evolved, there were a few big milestones that I've sort of noted here. And while there's a gradual element to all of this, there are a few sort of key growth moments for us. In 2005, we released an album by an artist named Anthony and the Johnsons, which went on to win the UK's coveted Mercury Prize, which is basically their top national music prize that's given to artists of British descent. That was a massive moment for us. We found ourselves in this rush to meet demand, particularly in Europe, when we had minimal staffing over there. And so it was a real inflection point for us, which led to sort of a years-long strategic plan to really build out staff in the UK. And then a few years later, in 2008, we released an album by an artist named Bon Iver, who is today still the largest artist that we work with, been nominated for multiple Grammys, won 2 Grammys, including Best New Artist, multiple records that have been certified gold and then platinum. And so that represented sort of a new commercial breakthrough for us, which again presented us with this moment of chasing scale and keeping up with the growth of our artists. And so as we were evolving along our own path, we realized that in our efforts to grow internationally, we needed to really double down on developing staff in the UK and in Europe and in other territories. And so around that time, we really committed to hiring a lot of staff in London. And the aim was we wanted to be able to look Bon Iver, Justin Byrne, the primary songwriter, and his management, look him in the face in a year or two and say, hey, when your next record comes, we don't want you to work with another label in Europe. We want to work with you globally. We want to be your one sole partner. And that's what we were able to do. In the interim, before his next record came, we released an album by a band called The War on Drugs, which was certified gold in the UK, gave us some proof of concept. And that sort of set us rolling. And I would say that's sort of a point in our history where the scale sort of tipped from us operating in a reactive mode, trying to chase the scale of our artists, to a proactive mode where we could build an infrastructure that would allow our artists to scale up with us. So that's sort of an arc of Secretly Group. Now, in the backdrop of all this, you have changes in the industry. In 2000, or between 1999 and 2001, something called Napster happened. Napster was a peer-to-peer file sharing system. And quite frankly, the centralized major label music industry freaked out. They did not know what to do to control people from sharing music. The initial response to Napster was aggressive litigation, and they were shut down in 2001. The RIAA and basically every major label in the world put in a class action lawsuit to fight Napster. They successfully knocked Napster back, but it did sort of kick off this existential crisis in where this business was headed. Shortly after, in 2003, the iTunes Store launched. The iPod entered the market. But even then, I think a lot of people in our industry looked at it as there was a lot of uncertainty. The decline in the physical media marketplace was much more rapid than the growth of digital music and digital consumption. And so over the course of the first decade of this century, we were in a period of sharp decline. And there were a lot of people sort of wailing about the death of the music industry. And we saw a lot of consolidation. We saw major labels buying each other. We saw some smart tech investments, some reckless tech investments. Just like other industries of the tech industry, a lot of startups flying very close to the sun, having moments and then failing quickly. But the ones that stuck around, obviously YouTube launched. And while we think of that primarily as a video platform, it became this other platform for people to interact with and share music. But again, the industry struggled with how to monetize this and how to create income that would keep the industry afloat. In the same time, we're seeing major physical retailers closed. Tower Records, Virgin Megastores, Barnes & Nobles, Best Buys closing or cutting back their retail footprint for music. And so again, we're seeing physical media decline at a pace more rapidly than digital media is growing. That all started to change in the period between 2009 and 2014, where we really saw a leveling in the industry. The global revenue base for the music industry was pretty much at a plateau during that period in time. But then in 2015, that's where we started to see the bounce back. And a lot of that correlated with the launch of Spotify in the US and the launch of Apple Music, and then a lot of other smaller streaming companies that followed in its wake. And what we've seen in the last 4 to 5 years, and we saw this earlier in our sector with our business than we did in the industry as a whole, but what we saw was streaming growth start to outpace the declines in other formats. And now, for the first time in the US, streaming revenue completely outweighs the entire revenue of the US music market just 2 years ago. And so this is sort of a mantra we've had with our staff for the last 4 or 5 years. Streaming is not the future, it is the present. It is the backbone of our business. And while we operate in a space that we still sell a lot of vinyl records, and we still sell albums to a lot of really dedicated sort of old school music fans who like to listen to albums front to back and hold it in their hands, like I'm sure some of you do. We are working in this new economy, and the only reason I think we're at this point and still a place where we're surviving, but also thriving and growing and adding staff, adding jobs in Bloomington and other places, is due to the fact that we were willing to try new things, commit to adding staff, commit to experimenting, and shifting our resources before we were forced to. And I think that while we operate in this niche industry that is probably, even after I talk with you today, going to remain somewhat mysterious, I think, to some of you or the average consumer, I do think that the takeaway that carries over to other businesses and other organizations is be flexible, be nimble, be intellectually curious, be willing to learn. Don't inherently fear technology for all the problems that comes with it. Engage with it and find the elements of it which can help and push things forward, and not simply be an impediment or a challenge to what you're used to. And so that's sort of the general shape of Secretly Group and sort of the industry we've been focused in. I know Sally introduced me as an arts guest, and I've spent a lot of time talking about the business side of things. But we do operate in this complicated space at the intersection of art and commerce. And while I've talked a lot about the business, I do want to just, as a final note, before we start to move on to any questions you might have, is just sort of identify what I mean by independent music and an independent record label. Like a lot of industries, we've seen a lot of consolidation in the music industry. There are essentially 3 major labels that control 75% of the marketplace. So EMI, Capitol, Virgin, Elektra, Arista, all these names that you've probably seen on the back of records for years, they're all parts of 3 companies now. So independent labels like us, if we are left to our own, to speak on our own, by ourselves, we have a very small voice. However, when we work with trade organizations such as A2IM, the American Association of Independent Music, we collectively speak for 1/4 of the market share of our industry. And the way we, as a company at Secretly Group, define independence, it is that we are fully owner-controlled, and we're not responsible for answering to shareholders. And that is ultimately the key that unlocks our ability to pursue our business in a way that is not strictly beholden to profits. Profits matter. We want to pay our staff. We want the artists we work with to be able to live and sustain themselves off of their music careers without having a day job. You know, we still function in capitalist terms. But we have the luxury of not making all decisions based on that bottom line. We can still make decisions in the interest of art, voices that we want to elevate, diverse perspectives that we want to elevate. And so what I would say is, whether it's independent music or independent film studios or bookstores or publishers or individual artists, continue to support and pay for the work that these artists and these companies make, you know, because they are ultimately still an essential piece of our economy, but they are also a cultural balance to what has become an increasingly monolithic media landscape. So that's my little sermon at the end. Thank you for having me.
Continue on. If you have any questions.
I got 2 questions. How did you come about with the name Secretly? The second is vinyl really making a comeback?
Yeah, so the name Secretly, a couple of the founders grew up in Fargo, North Dakota. There's a blurry mythology about this. A couple of them grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and so there's a little bit of border humor that sort of involved their observation. There are people like William Shatner and Neil Young and these people who were popular in Western media in the US that were actually Canadian. So they had this theory that sometimes there were people all around them that were maybe a little bit off or a little bit different that were actually secretly Canadian. So that's the quick backstory there. Vinyl, it is still a niche thing, but it's a meaningful source of income for us. I think the genres and the sort of sector that we tend to tread in, that's the zone where we've seen the most growth. You know, and it's not just people your age and my age. We sell a lot of vinyl records to college-age kids. And you can go into places like Urban Outfitters and even some Target stores and Best Buy stores of experimenting with carrying some vinyl. You might see it in Barnes & Noble. And so there's a ceiling on it, but it is meaningful for us. And I think as deep music fans who have always appreciated the album format, we're going to make it as long as people want it. Yeah.
So, can you explain how streaming services work? Because as a consumer, I just feel like, gosh, I'm getting something almost for nothing. But I wonder what the artist is getting out of it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the basic economic model is people pay $9.99 or whatever for a monthly subscription. All that money goes into one big pot. And then the way it's paid out is typically on a pro rata basis based on what's actually listened to. Now, on the front end, that means money flows a little bit more slowly because you're not capturing $10 up front for someone buying an album or $20 up front for someone buying an album. But what it does do is it sort of more accurately reflects how people are listening to music. I think there was an era, particularly in the late 90s, where you'd have pop artists and people would buy a CD with 20 songs for the 2 songs they heard on the radio, and that's all they listened to is those 2 songs, right? And so in some ways it's better for the consumer. Practically, how that pays through to the artist is we see about half of a penny for each song that's streamed. That seems minuscule, and it is small, but it does add up, particularly as streaming services have grown across the world. I think what's been really exciting for us is there have been countries and markets where the physical music market had declined significantly, was almost non-existent. Places like South America, certain areas in Southeast Asia, outside of Japan. And with the proliferation of smartphones and people's ability to carry music with them, we've seen South America, Mexico, Brazil in particular, Korea, the Philippines. We've seen countries that were never really a meaningful source of revenue for us, not just create significant income for our artists, but it also sort of provides a proof of concept to them that these fans are there. And so it gives us data that shows, hey, if you go tour Asia, you can actually sell 400 tickets in Seoul, and you can sell 500 tickets in Tokyo. And so it's helped to even further globalize our audiences.
Great question.
Yeah.
When you do an artist release, what does that marketing package look like? And is it different for geographic areas of the world?
So she's asking when we do an artist release, what does the marketing look like, and does that vary by territory or by country? So we fund the recordings up front, and then we pay for publicists and radio promotion, online advertising, sometimes physical advertising. We still do billboards and things like that from time to time, or subway posters in places like New York and London. We will sometimes, do sort of experiential events, particularly in larger markets, and some of those are things that we'll collaborate with, a company like Spotify, or sort of a lifestyle brand like Red Bull, which you think of as a beverage company, but they actually do quite a bit in the music space. And so the way we shape that in different countries, it's part of it's just looking at whatever data we have, whether it's artists touring or previous sales or that streaming data, to see where the audience is. And sometimes it's a matter of growing and amplifying that audience, and sometimes it's seeing that certain countries are lagging behind and we need to develop them more. But ultimately, artists being present and playing shows and doing interviews in local markets with local media, that's sort of the key to growing that global audience.
Okay, Nick?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sally doesn't come up to bat very often, but you got a great slugging percentage, and you hit another home run. Thank you. In honor of today's presentation, as usual, we include a donation as part of our quarterly contribution to a local charity. This quarter is My Sister's Closet. Our next celebration of service will be March 10th at the IMU, back in the Georgian Room, where we will hear from Professor Kawada on frontiers of research at IU on repetitive head impacts in sports. It's another health-oriented talk. So it'll be very interesting. Jim Bright and I both saw him speak, heard him speak at a university event, and it's just incredible data, very informative. My thought of the week. This is sort of the ecological golden rule from Wendell Berry. Do unto those downstream as you would have those upstream do unto you. If you'll please rise and recite the four-way test with me. Of the things we think, say, or do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun?